I was preparing this sermon, I got a call from Nyack Hospital, and it was a gentleman. The phone number came up on my phone as being from Connecticut. And he said, I'm looking for a priest. I want a priest to come and pray for somebody at the hospital. And I said, well, what hospital? He said, Nyack Hospital. And I said, well, I'm not a priest, but I'll come and pray, because I was a priest for many years, and if you can't find a Catholic priest, I'm probably the best next thing you can get. So he said, please come down. So I said to him, give me a little bit of time. I'm dressed like a bum. I'm going to change into something that will make me look a little bit more respectable. I'll be down there as soon as I can. So I scooted over. I was in my office. I scooted over to the house, and I'm starting to get dressed. But before I let him off the phone, he said, what's the patient's name and what's the room? And he told me a name. It was a woman. And I said, what room? And he said, NICU. I said, oh, okay. Then I got to think, what the heck is NICU? It's the neonatal intensive care unit. He wasn't calling for an old person. He had a little girl. He had a little girl who was at the point of death. And he wanted someone to come and pray and anoint that child. Why? What was he asking of Jesus? What did he want for that little girl? In the gospel, we find a very similar guy, Jairus. Jairus is a big shot, or at least he is locally, right? He's the president of his synagogue. He's well thought of in his community. He's probably a wealthy enough guy, and he's got the respect of others. He's important in a synagogue. The last time Jesus was in a synagogue in this gospel, they were plotting to kill him. So this man is desperate. He no longer cares what the other synagogue leaders think of him. He wants his child to get better. And in a society where dignity is important, he throws himself at Jesus' feet. That's hard to do. And Mark says, and he begs repeatedly, come and what? What does he ask of Jesus? The word in Greek is soste. Come and soste, my little girl. It's a word that can be translated in three different ways. He could be saying, come cure my little girl, come heal my little girl, or come save my little girl. What is he asking for? Jesus doesn't parse the word. He just goes with him. He goes with him, and as he's on his way, much to Jairus' chagrin, I would imagine, because Jairus is in a rush, right? My little girl is at the point of death. Hurry up! And they're in this big old crowd, and people are pushing all over the place. But there's a woman in the crowd, and Mark says she has been hemorrhaging for 12 years. For 12 years, she's been bleeding. For 12 years, she has been sick. For 12 years, she's gone to doctor after doctor after doctor. You know what that means? She used to be wealthy. Because in that society, you couldn't go to doctors if you were poor. But she has spent everything she's had on getting better and hasn't gotten better, but only gotten worse. So now she's poor, she's sick, she's suffering, and she doesn't care about anything but getting close to this guy Jesus, because she hears that he's a healer. And so she wants to just touch his garment, just touch the bottom of his robe. And she says to herself, he will sustain me. Again, the same word. What is she asking for? What does she want when she touches Jesus' robe? probably the answer to both of those questions for both Jairus and this woman. They want to be cured. Jairus wants his daughter cured, and this woman wants her bleeding cured. And when she touches Jesus, Mark says immediately, the bleeding that has been going on for 12 years stops. And she feels in her body that she is cured. Great, right? She wins. Except that Jesus turns around. Now, because she's got this flow of blood, she's not only unclean, she has been an outcast in society, because the flow of blood makes her someone who can't go to the temple, who can't even be touched by other people, because when you touch a person who's unclean, you become unclean yourself. So she is not only sick, but she's isolated. Now she feels that it's all over, but Jesus turns around and says, "Who touched me?" And she's thinking, "Oh my goodness, I just made him unclean. He is going to chew me out with a chewing out that you have never heard before." And instead, he turns around, and after she explains what she did, after he hears her faith, he says, "Daughter." You don't call someone you don't like daughter, right? That's a family term. That's a term of belonging. A woman who has been isolated for 12 years and now hears daughter. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. She came looking for a cure, but look how much she got. She was cured of a disease, but she was healed of her brokenness and her isolation. And she received the saving touch of Christ. Life came into that woman's world. And that is a life that can never be extinguished. But while that's all happening to her, Jairus hears the bad news: your daughter's dead. So for him, there is no cure. For him, there is no healing, or so he thinks. And Jesus says, look, don't listen to them. Just have faith. And he goes to that little girl and holds her by the hand. Notice the touch, how important touch is in the story. And he says, little girl, get up. And she does. What has Jesus given her? Her dad asked for a cure, but Jesus gave her life again. What does this gospel ask of us? Because all of us will get to the point where all of our resources will fail us. Jairus was wealthy and well-positioned, but he couldn't save his daughter. And the woman was wealthy at one time and able to go to doctors, but they couldn't save her. Only Jesus could save her. And in each of our lives, we'll get to that point, right? Each of us will be at a place where our resources will fail us, where we will realize we can't save ourselves. Doctors can't save us, nurses can't save us, governments can't save us, nobody can save us. Because we confront what is the ultimate realities of our lives, and we do that, but we do not need to do it alone. And I think the power of this gospel is Jesus reminding us that sometimes when we turn to him, we do get a cure. But often he will simply heal what is within us that needs healing. And it may not be what we think needs healing. I remember my sister who died of ovarian cancer years ago. And she was, when she was in good health, she could be a very difficult person. But that cancer healed her. God healed her. By the time she died, she had risen to such a spiritual height that she could love people who, in other moments of her life, she wouldn't even want to give the time of day to. It transformed her. Jesus heals and transforms. And Jesus saves. Jairus' daughter and the woman with the flow of blood ultimately did confront a sickness and a disease that would take them. And that's okay, because that's life. That's going to happen to all of us. All of us will have our crosses, and all of us will perish. But we don't need to perish alone, because Jesus doesn't promise to cure us of everything. But he promises to heal us of what we need to be healed of. And he promises us life that knows no end. That's what he promises, and that's what he unfailingly gives us. Unfailingly. So your brother, Joe, I've prayed and prayed for him to be cured. Now it sounds like God is giving him life in a different way than I and you have anticipated. And we don't know how God works in each of our lives, but we know that he works, and that he works with power and with love, and we can always choose to see that if we look. Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist, reminds us that the last great freedom we have is the freedom to interpret our circumstances, to see in what is going on in our lives something that is good and noble and positive, even if it's difficult. I don't know what happened at the NICU. While I was getting into my less crummy attire, I got another call from the hospital that they had actually found a real Catholic priest, so I could stand down. So I never got to meet the family, but I got to pray for them. And I got to reflect on what they were asking of God. They knew there would be no cure. They knew there could be no healing. But they really, really, really wanted to know that even in that circumstances, Jesus saves. And he does. Amen.